what I'm about to do, we're still in part 2 of this lecture. I'm now going to raise a small problem with past, present, and future. Remember at the beginning I said that there are 3 parts in section 2. We are now in section 2. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to raise a small problem with future. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to raise a small problem with present. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to raise a small problem with past. Here we go. Small problem with future. In the future lie, the charismatic cult leader comes to a group of people and he says 5 words. God has not yet spoken. Someday he's going to speak to your descendants. But God has not yet spoken. Now, if I'm incredibly charismatic and you are a wild-eyed, gullible cult follower, and I tell you God has not yet spoken, what do you believe? God has not yet spoken, but someday he'll speak. Okay. If you believe God has not yet spoken and someday he'll speak, what do you tell your kids? Same thing, God has not yet spoken. And they tell their kids, God has not yet spoken. And they tell their kids, God has not yet spoken. What is the problem with that? Again, lock your feet onto the ground. Empirical data. There is a group of people on planet Earth today who believe with all their heart and soul their ancestors heard God speak. These people are called Orthodox Jews. I know they exist. They're out there. Okay, now, I also know with certainty, and nobody on the planet argues, this is not the first generation of Orthodox Jews. Everyone who's involved in this debate agrees. These Orthodox Jews, the vast majority of them, came from a previous generation of Orthodox Jews. And everybody agrees there was a generation before that as well. And if you actually go and look at the data, if you'll come down to the Israel Museum with me and you'll look at texts, I can show you a chain going back for at least 2,000 years of these people who believe with all their heart and soul that God spoke to their ancestors. Okay? No one argues on this sociological phenomenon. The whole discussion is, what's at the top of that chain? Is that a charismatic cult leader or was that God at Mount Sinai? But everybody agrees that for a couple thousand years there's been these misguided people who thought their ancestors heard God at Mount Sinai. Everyone agrees to that. Even the Orthodox Jews will admit there's been a couple thousand years of us. In fact, they'll say there's been more than 3,000 years. Okay. But from documents you can demonstrate about 2,000 years. Now, the problem with the future lie is, if I come to you and I say to you, God has not yet spoken, and you believe it, and you tell your kids, God has not yet spoken, and they believe it, and they tell their kids, God has not yet spoken, you'll end up with a chain going down through history of people who say 5 words. What are they? God has not yet spoken. Is that in fact the sociological reality we find? No, which means that is not the future lie. Is that clear? Now, someone could have told a future lie, and at some point it could have segued into present or past. And present or past, once you hit present or past, then you'll end up with a group of people saying, yes, God already spoke. But the future lie alone can't launch this. 1 down, 2 to go? Okay.